Ooh, the Apple Watch Ultra. It's a stark departure from the previous small, demure compact Apple smartwatches in the past, and you know what? You should buy one. Wait, what? Why would you do that? Let's find out. And while we're finding out, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Real talk, this thing is incredible. Legitimately, it's the next step forward, moving smartwatches from technological curiosities into something that a regular person might buy as their next timepiece. Before we start gushing and giving the watch too much credit, I do want to say up front that while I think there are a ton of reasons to buy this thing, hence the video, when it comes to the price, it is fairly expensive. Yes, I know. Believe me, I've seen your comments that in the world of high-end watches and adventure watches, which, to be fair, is where the Apple Watch Ultra is marketed, it's actually fairly low priced. But Gary, I'm not a high-end watch connoisseur, nor am I all that adventurous, besides, going grocery shopping on a football game day. That's pretty dangerous and adventurous, which is perfect for the watch. So in that context of regular dude talking to other regular people, it's expensive. That sucks. As we move into the reasons to buy, I also want to note that I'm not going to rehash all of the same things that I talked about in my follow-up video. You can go watch that if you want to. These reasons will be ways in which this watch improves upon and is objectively better than any other standard Apple Watch. First up, should come as no surprise to anybody that watches my content or my insane ramblings on Twitter, it's the battery life. Holy crap. The battery life on the Apple Watch Ultra is so far above the battery life on even my Series 8 that it's almost a totally different kind of device. I've said this before, but I think the biggest hurdle to someone actually buying a smartwatch is if you have a watch today, it will take literal years to need a new battery or need a charge. You go from that to asking somebody to have to charge after only a day of use, and that's a big habit or lifestyle change to deal with. And it's not just a material change where, hey, now I've got a new watch that can do all sorts of new cool things. You have to actually change your own personal behaviors to rotate around a product that needs constant management and constant babying. You get that fixed here. On the Apple Watch Ultra, for me, I routinely get 3 to 4 days out of a single charge. Now that might not sound like a lot, but in a practical sense, you go from a device that has to be babied once a day to one that can very comfortably make it through days of neglect. You just wear it and it works. And what this means in a broader sense is that you can take advantage of all of those cool new aspects of the watchOS operating system. Something that's always confused me during Apple press releases and in watching other people use these is how you can get all of those cool sleep tracking modes and data to work. Because for me, like we said, the only time that fits into my schedule or my desired schedule, I just charge this before I go to bed. Well, if it's on the charger and not on my wrist, I can't exactly track my sleep schedule, right? Well, now with the Ultra, it's no big deal because you just never have to take the watch off and it will still last for days. And it can get even better if you need more longevity thanks to low powered mode. This wasn't an option when the watch first released, but now if you need to go longer without charging, with a few taps of the screen, you can limit some wireless and screen functionality, and you can now hopefully go a week without charging. A week without charging. That's just so good. And by itself, you don't have to watch any other part of this video. I think the battery life alone is a reason to buy this watch. But thankfully, that's not all. There are actually other reasons to still buy this. Thanks to today's sponsor, Squarespace, you can create your own very beautiful website. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a professional website, online store, or portfolio. It's easy to claim a domain/URL, create a custom site that matches your style, and bring your ideas to life. Head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/everydaydad to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Next up is easily the display. You might not think that tiny displays moving to slightly less tiny displays would be that big of a deal, but it's actually not just the size, it's the shape of the display. All other Apple Watches have a curved display. That's not really a problem, it's part of what makes Apple Watches, but it does introduce a few unique hurdles, especially if you get the smaller of those two watches. I'm normally a person that gets smaller watches until this guy. And the craziest part about those hurdles is you don't even realize they're there until you use this thing. For me, the worst of those is the unsurety. Unsurety. I feel like I make up words a lot when I'm writing these scripts, but it's the lack of precision on tapping the screen. It doesn't matter as much if you're just sitting at a desk, tapping it, checking notifications, stuff like that. But the second you try doing something active and using the watch at the same time, it becomes a big problem. Trying to run and change a song or read an important text, is real hard on the curved screen. And yes, it could just be a me problem. Maybe it's not that big of a deal for other folks, but I can only speak to my experiences. And most of the times on a regular Apple Watch, I just kind of have to hope and guess. But on the Apple Watch Ultra, the flatter screen makes it more like tapping a button on a smartphone, which again, for me, it's just easier and more sure of an interaction. I will send text messages using the little built-in keyboard. I would never do that on a regular Apple Watch. And it's not just the screen, but the physical controls are also better than anything else on a standard Apple Watch. You do get the traditional crown and button combination on the side, but this crown and button are very satisfying to use. Not only are they a little bigger, so it's easier to manipulate them, but they are darn rugged too. A few months ago during a parents versus kids soccer match, me, being my clumsy self, fell roughly 6 different times. In my defense, it was very muddy and I did not have cleats on, but in the course of falling, I and my Apple Watch Ultra were totally covered in mud. I could easily tell that mud had gotten like in between the crown and the body because this was very gritty to move. It only took a little bit of water under here to get out and it was right back to working perfectly fine. And even with all of those tumbles and me being pretty hard on the watch since I bought it, it legitimately doesn't have any scratches and it looks just like it did on the day I bought it. Except I bought a new wrist strap, but we'll talk about that in a second. Not just the shape, but the extra size makes everything else better too. I'm able to see my notifications, I'm able to see the time, I'm just able to see. Back to speaking of reasons to buy the watch though, no kidding, without any shadow of a doubt, the Apple Watch Ultra has the single best watch band I've ever used. I mean, overall in my life. I've been wearing watches for what, about 30 years now, since middle school. I've worn all manner of small watches, big watches, I've worn fitness trackers, and big old GPS watches for triathlons. And the Trail Loop, this guy right here, whoops all of them. And that's pretty crazy to me because originally I bought the Ultra with the Alpine Loop and I hated it. That might be one of my least favorite watch bands of all time. It never fit my wrist correctly. It was a hassle to get on and off, and that whole thing was just a pain in the butt. I do not recommend the Alpine Loop. The Trail Loop though is fantastic, not even in competition with anything else. If you just look at it on the website, it looks a lot like the regular sports loop from the standard Apple watches, and in a lot of ways it's similar, but here you're essentially getting the perfect distillation of that style. It's super comfortable. I know cloth type watch bands are hit or miss for folks, but I think this is the most comfortable band. The material is nice and soft and it doesn't bother my wrist if I wear it for a couple of days at a time. Remember, you can do that now with the battery life. And the way they've attached the Velcro at the end of the loop, they put a little bit of structure like in the end right here, which adds, well, grippiness isn't a word, and it's not the word I'm trying to use here, but because of the added material here at the end of the loop, it's really easy to grab onto and put the watch on. This little quality of life part here is just so good. And I know that sounds like a silly thing to talk about in a video like this, but I'm all about quality of life improvements, and this watch band is full of them. I've never had a watch band that was so comfortable and so easy to get into my exact sizing. Once you've got the watch fit and set, it doesn't budge, and you don't have to buy that comfort by getting a lot of wobbling or movement. This band has totally changed my experience with the watch. Yes, you could buy this band and go with one of the larger 45mm versions of the Apple Watch, but it won't perfectly sit in the band housing, and if I'm spending Apple Watch money and this much money on a strap, I'm getting a band that perfectly works with my watch. I was also curious, so I looked on Amazon to see if the quote-unquote third-party knockoff vendors had gotten in the game with Trail Loop, and hey, looks like you can get a 3-pack for 19 bucks. Now, I don't know their quality, but they might be worth checking out because much like the watch itself, the band for $99 is very expensive, especially if you are used to spending $5 on a watch by itself. Straight up, the Apple Watch Ultra has blown my mind. I only bought it as a curiosity, and I hadn't even planned on making that much content about it because my initial reaction was, why would you spend so much money on specs and features that aren't that much different from a regular Apple Watch? But my initial reaction was totally wrong. I don't think there have been many things thus far this year that gets the capital "you should buy" video treatment from Apple, but darn it, the Apple Watch Ultra easily makes its way into that vaunted list. So yes, you should absolutely buy the Apple Watch Ultra. It's just fantastic, and I've thoroughly enjoyed mine. And if you like this video, but you want to see a little bit more in depth on things I like or dislike about the watch, click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.